You're listening to the Rachel's English podcast, made especially for non-native speakers, where we study the way Americans really speak. My goal is for you to listen to this podcast every week and sound more natural when speaking English and improve your listening comprehension. If you need a transcript of this podcast, it's absolutely free to download. Visit rachelsenglish.com/podcast and look for this episode. In today's episode, we're speaking with an American about how he learned to speak English. Now, most Americans don't know how they learned because they learned when they were kids, and it happens naturally by immersion. Dave learned that way, but when he suffered a stroke as an adult, he had to relearn how to speak. He has some great insight into how an adult can train to sound more like an American and to participate in American English conversation. Let's take a listen. I'm here with my friend Dave. Dave and I met only online, but several years ago, we had a Skype call. I want to say that was like 5 or 6 years ago.
Yeah, I think so.
And Dave contacted me because he had been using my videos to practice his English, and he was using them in a way that I had not thought about before, and that was as a native speaker who had suffered a stroke.
Mm-hmm.
And was needed to relearn speaking. And I thought, whoa, I'm making these videos for non-native English speakers, but this is an obvious application as well. So welcome, Dave. Thank you for coming on my podcast.
Thank you for having me.
And I've actually made a video that has a little bit of video with Dave in it as well. So if you want to check out Dave, go to Rachel's English on YouTube or on my website and search the word squirrel.
Yeah.
Such a tough word.
You know, I still can't pronounce that squirrel.
Yeah, well, it's hard.
That's the best I can do.
It's hard because it has S, K, and W all at the beginning.
Yeah.
So Dave, can you tell me a little bit about yourself? How old were you when you had your stroke, and what were you doing up to that point?
Well, I had my stroke when I was 58, and at the time I was working for a software company as a technical writer.
Mm-hmm.
So my job was working with words,
right,
and language, and I even had people reporting to me who were not native speakers, and they would always come to me and say, "What is the best way to say this or that?"
Okay, so you were an expert there on English, on the language. It was your work, writing in it.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I was going to ask you, what was your relationship to language like before the stroke? And it sounds like not just the average relationship that your average American would have, because it was, in fact, your work.
Yeah. I love language and words already, but in 2008 I had a stroke in my sleep, and I woke up and I couldn't move my right side, and I couldn't speak at all.
That sounds terrifying.
Yeah, it was. After a while, I relearned how to move, and I relearned how to walk, and my hand and arm got better. But my main thing was speaking.
Was speaking harder to work on, harder to gain ground with than the physical with the arm and such?
Yeah. Yes and no. No, because walking came back quickly. My arm came back so quickly, but my language was very gradual. And as you can hear, my voice sounds it sounds odd. um, Many people say, "Do you have an accent?"
Oh,
And I
really?
said, "Well, I do now."
Right. So, do you know, is there research to say why the language takes more time to come back than walking, for example? Does it have to do with the smaller and more subtle movements?
Well, every stroke is different. Some people are not affected. Some people with a speech, some people never get it back. So I found I am lucky that I can speak at all.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, but my stroke affected my left side of my brain, and that is where the speech sensors are.
Right. So, you said when you realized you were having a stroke that you couldn't speak. When were you able to start speaking?
Well, as I said, it was very gradual. About 1 or 2 weeks, the speech therapist worked on my being able to imitate sounds and words, but I couldn't come up with them by myself because I had aphasia and apraxia.
Okay, so two different speech
Yeah,
issues, aphasia and apraxia. So, what would be the definition of those two conditions?
for me, aphasia is word finding. Um, at first, every word I want to say, I couldn't can come up with a word for it. Every concept I wanted to say, I knew what I wanted to say conceptually, but not the individual words. Every word was at the tip of my tongue, but I couldn't
You
think
couldn't
of it.
recall. Yeah.
Yeah,
So, how do you work on that? That seems like something that I wouldn't even know how to practice
well,
word remembering the words.
yeah. Well, in my case, it, the speech therapists have lots of tricks to get that to help me. And in my case, aphasia was only about 2 years. It got better and better, and now I mostly can get the words. I can. I know what the words I want to say, but apraxia is now my main problem. Apraxia, as opposed to aphasia, apraxia means I have that concept of why I want to say. I have the words I want to say it, but I can't remember how to make those words. The the muscles and the tongue and the palate are not, I have forgotten how to make the words. So that's why your videos were so good for me.
So apraxia is you can hear the word in your head, you know the word, but getting it out of your mouth is a struggle.
Yeah, I had to relearn all the how to make all the sounds in the English language.
Wow. And then also how to put them all together.
Yeah.
Would you say that now, do you think more in terms of sound units, or have words themselves become a unit? Maybe even common phrases have become a unit.
Yeah. I, I am working on that.
Mm-hmm.
Many phrases come out naturally now.
That's great.
But not all of them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's one thing I try to encourage my students to do, is to identify phrases that they're using all the time or hearing all the time, like, I don't know. And to think of that as one thing rather than three separate words.
Mm-hmm.
Dave, before we talk a little bit more about apraxia, which I definitely want to do because I think that's really connected to learning the language, you had mentioned that with aphasia, with recalling the word, that your speech therapists gave you some tips. Do you remember any of those tips that they gave you that you used to actually actively work on your word recall?
Yeah, well, one of those tips that therapists would give a cue, C-U-E.
C-U-E, cue.
Cue, yeah,
Cue.
thanks.
Uh-huh.
They will give a cue, like a cup of tea, and I say coffee.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because saying the word coffee is hard, but saying it with fill in the blank, it's easy.
Okay, so again, that relates to thinking of language units as being these common phrases.
Mm-hmm.
That's interesting. Okay, I think that's a great tip, just for people to think about. You know, when you're learning English, you have the building blocks of sounds and then words, but not to stop there, to look beyond that to the common phrases, idioms, etc. that we use.
Mm-hmm.
Does it feel like, I think I know the answer to this, but is your listening comprehension completely intact? Did you ever have problems post-stroke understanding people, or was that part of the language center not affected?
Not for me. It is for some people.
Okay.
But not for me.
Okay, so that was one less thing that you had to work on.
Yeah.
So I just read an article that you wrote that you sent me, and there were some really interesting things in there. You talked about filler and how much of what we say isn't just the actual content, but filler phrases, filler words. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Well, yeah. As I was relearning my speech, I found that so many things I want to say and so many things that people say were throwaway words. Like a person might say, instead of yes, they might say, well, I think that it is necessarily so.
Okay, so by throwaway, you mean words that are extra to just conveying the actual meaning.
Yeah.
Yeah.
or sometimes they are and and
Right.
I
Thinking.
mean and all those little
Right.
words too.
I've noticed, I record myself a lot in conversation and go back and use it for videos and such. And I've noticed that I do use the filler word like quite a bit.
Oh
And
yeah,
it doesn't, have any meaning. And there I just said, and it doesn't, there also being a little filler phrase without meaning. So
yeah.
what is your advice for dealing with that? I mean, coming from where you were, did you just find the most direct way to say something because it required the least amount of work?
Yeah. At first, I would think of what I wanted to say in my head, and it was things like, well, I don't know if you are right, or something. And that was too many words for me. So I edited in my mind to maybe.
I love it. So your
Yeah,
mind still worked the way it always did with coming
yeah,
up with that phrase, but you just simplified.
yeah. Now I am getting back in the habit to say unnecessary words.
And you're adding them back in now because they have a subtle meaning, or because they change the way something would be perceived, or why are you adding them back in now?
Well, I think it was because I used to speak like that, and I am, it sounds natural to
Yeah.
me.
Yeah, that makes sense. Because that's what Americans around you are also doing.
Yeah, yeah.
So back to apraxia and this concept of the word in your head, but you have to think through every mouth position in order to say it.
Hmm.
How did you work on that? What processes did you have?
Well, first, me and my speech therapist worked on the app, the letters. Um,
The alphabet.
yeah,
Yes.
the alphabet,
Mm-hmm.
and the letters and the individual sounds.
Mm-hmm.
And then we work on putting those sounds into words and then into phrases.
Mm-hmm.
It is a very hard process.
Yeah, I bet. Very tedious.
Yeah, it took me years. Yeah.
Yeah. So when you were doing this, I imagine that you started out going very slowly, and then the more you did it, the more your mouth was able to do things more quickly with less thought. Is that right?
Hmm. Yeah.
So it was just intentional, slow intentional practice, slow intentional work.
Hmm. Yeah. Because my brain lost the muscle memories.
Yes. This is something I'm always telling my students is they want like a shortcut. They want
Hmm.
to know, okay, I get the concept. How do I just make it happen? And I tell them there's no making it happen other than the slow, intentional practice. And, you
Hmm.
start slowly and you do it as correctly as you can, as slowly as possible. And then you build from there. And then your muscles will start to do some of the work for you.
Hmm.
But as a teacher, that, I'm not giving people knowledge. I'm giving people tools to train themselves. And if they
Mhm.
don't feel like they have the time to train themselves, then the tools I've given them mean absolutely nothing. And of course, for you, you were in a situation where I'm sure you were willing, despite the tediousness of it, to put in that time.
Yeah, because I had to. What choice did I have?
Right. And would you say, you said it took you years to get to where you are. How much time did you work on speech a day? Is it the kind of thing where you would work for a half hour and would just need a break? How did you structure that?
Well, for 2 years, I went to speech therapy 3 times a week. But after that, I kept working on reading aloud
Mm-hmm.
and working on my speeches. I give sometimes talks to students and the like,
Mm-hmm.
and that helped me a lot
Mm-hmm.
too.
You mean having something to work on that you were presenting?
Yeah.
Oh, that's a good point. That's something that I think my students could think about, is come up with a presentation to do or a video to make and then work towards that.
Mm-hmm.
So you also mentioned in this article the musicality of language and how it was activating a different part of your brain. Can you talk about that some?
Yeah, as I said, my stroke had affected my left side of my brain, but music is mostly on the right side. It is all over the brain, but mostly on the right side. So many people are amazed that people who can't speak because of the stroke can sing almost perfectly. So, in fact, I I sang I sang "Happy Birthday" in the hospital when I had my stroke. And that was amazing to me too.
Yeah.
There is a amazing YouTube video by a guy who is giving a talk who had severe aphasia. He didn't speak at all for 2 years. Now he speaks fluently, and he said there is a therapy called melodic intonation therapy.
Melodic intonation therapy.
And that saved his life, because now when he wants to talk, in his brain, he translates the words to singing. And he said, every time I talk, I am singing to you.
Yeah, you showed me that video actually. You
Oh,
sent
yeah.
me that clip. I watched it years ago. It's amazing. Is
Yeah,
that something you've done?
not as strictly, but that guy was an inspiration to me.
Yeah.
And he MIT therapy, and you too, you guys are reminding me that music is a lot like singing. And when I get trouble with a word, I tap my finger, and that helps me because finger tapping is also a trick of therapists
Okay.
to remind the brain to keep the rhythm going.
Yeah, when you're tapping your finger, it's bringing in a musical element.
Yeah,
That makes a lot of sense.
yeah. That it reminds the brain also to keep going.
Mhm. Yeah.
Aphasia and apraxia are not helped by stopping on a word.
Okay.
They are helped with going going on and on.
That's interesting. That I didn't know that, but that actually rings true to something I'm doing with my students. I have this online school, Rachel's English Academy, and in the opening weeks there, I have people work on this concept of singing their phrases and singing their English. And I wonder how many people want to drop out immediately because it just seems too strange. And then I've also found that when I'm working with students, I set up the material in there for them to study on their own. And and I break it down into these little phrases, and there's a button that they can press to play that over and over. And I tell them to play it, say it, right away 10, 20 times. I say, if you mess up, don't stop and try to go back and fix it, because you're just going to play it and say it again. Just keep thinking forward. And I found that when they do that I don't have to tell them what's wrong. They somehow figure out how to sound more American, and they're able to do it without me giving them any coaching, just by playing it and repeating it, 10 or 20 times in a row. It's really mind-blowing to see them make these corrections without me doing a thing.
That brings up another therapy that I have. MLG. MLG is, what is it stands for? I can't remember what it stands for.
Okay.
And MLG, you take a word or a phrase and you just power through it and say it, and you wait 4 seconds. 1, 2, 3, 4. You say it again, and you wait 4 seconds. 1, 2, 3, 4. You say it again 4 times. And at the 4th time, it is amazing how much improved the 4th time is from the first time.
Yeah, that's so cool. And I guess that has something to do with the muscle memory.
Yeah, I don't know. It's like a magic or something.
It is magic. I often compare working on your accent with being a musician practicing a tricky passage. You slow it down, you do it so many times, and your body starts to take it in, and that's how you work it into what you're doing.
Mm-hmm.
So you've said that R versus W can be pretty hard for you, like quest, crest, rest, west. Is there anything that you do in particular to work on that, or is it just, the same method that you use for everything?
Well, I have book of minimal pairs that I work on it. But working on the minimal pairs helps a little bit. But working on the phrases for the minimal pairs helps a lot.
Okay.
Because rest and rest don't sound a lot different to me. But go rest, young man, sounds very good, I think. That's what, when I get stuck, I try to use it in the phrase.
Again, coming back to the idea of phrases and not just breaking it down to the teeniest, tiniest, smallest part, but thinking of that's a great idea for my students with tricky sounds or like a minimal pair that they mess up, R versus W. Maybe don't just think of a word that you're going to use to remind yourself, but think of a small phrase like go west or something like that can somehow bring up the sound in a cleaner, clearer way.
Or link it to the previous word.
Oh, I love linking. You're speaking my language.
I know you do.
So you would say that linking one of those tricky words to the word before helps you with that opening sound?
Yeah, because it's no longer opening.
Okay. So if you think of a phrase that starts with R, then you just think of a filler word to put in front of it.
Yeah. But it's hard to think of a filler word.
Yeah. Right. It's
all
hard
the time.
Yeah, it's hard to do that on the spot in the moment. Speaking of on the spot in the moment, there's one other thing that I wanted to ask you about from this article where you talk about being in a group conversation and how there are just these little pauses and otherwise the conversation just keeps going and it's hard to chime in. Can you tell me a little bit about what you've discovered about what works for that?
Well, in my case, saying something like or something loud draws attention to me, and then I can formulate the words I want to say, because it takes me a little bit of time, and more time than the normal person is given to speak.
Right.
So, or in the another way to interrupt this conversation is to put up your finger, saying like "me too."
Yeah, a visual clue. Yeah, I like that idea, and I also like your idea of you don't have to formulate your whole sentence in order to break into a conversation. Native speakers speak very fast. If you just have one word that will direct attention to you, then you can take that second to formulate your sentence and your idea. So Dave suggested and I think other quick words that you could use would be something like well, or you know, or little,
or but.
Or but.
But.
Yes.
And everyone turns to you and say, and expect the rest of the sentence.
Right. To listen to your opinion. And so this is something that my students who are intimidated by group conversation can think about. 1 or 2 words that they will get very comfortable with that they can use as their break-in words.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Dave, is there anything else that you wanted to talk about with your experience with speech?
Well, keep at it.
That's right.
Yeah.
If you had decided back when you had your stroke that it was too hard, then you would be in the same position today that you were then. But instead, here you are, interviewed for a podcast, speaking English.
Yeah, thanks.
I love that advice. Like I said, I think a lot of people want a quick fix. Yeah. And it does take some time and some dedication to make a change and to retrain these very fine muscles.
Mm-hmm. It does.
Well, Dave, thank you so much for taking the time out of your day to come onto this call with me. I know that the people listening really appreciate it, and I do too.
No problem. Thank you.
What a hard-working learner of English. Thanks for listening. To see the show notes and links to related topics, including Dave's YouTube channel, which has all sorts of resources for stroke survivors, visit rachelsenglish.com/podcast and look for this episode. New podcasts are released every Wednesday. Be sure to go to the iTunes Store and subscribe. Also, please consider leaving a review in the iTunes Store. I'd love to hear what you think of the podcast.